Back in early 2010s, the racing genre was full of variety. We had tons of titles that felt completely different from each other. Blur, Split Second, Burnout, Grid, Midnight Club, Driver, Need for Speed, and many, many more. But now the market is basically just Forza Horizon, Forza Horizon Clone number 1 and Forza Horizon Clone number 2. While somewhere in the distance Mario Kart drives by and every 7 or 8 years a new Gran Turismo comes out. So the obvious question is, what happened? That's exactly what we are going to figure out today. How we went from a huge variety of games to the near monopoly we have now. And as bonus, I will show you the game Forza Horizon stole everything from. In short, we are going to look back at the long history of racing games and find the moment where the genre possibly took a wrong turn. And don't worry, I am not going all the way back to the very beginning. I know when you are dropping the video, guys. So instead, let's jump to the genre's biggest breakthrough. The 5th generation of consoles, aka PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn and a few other ones. It was the first generation of 3D games. Sure, 3D looked pretty rough by today's standards, but back then it felt revolutionary. For people from 90s, it looked insanely realistic. Because of that and easy developing pipeline, developers started making racing games for every possible taste. Want arcade racing? You had Need for Speed. Rally games, there were tons of them. Simulators, Gran Turismo. Some hyper-fast cosmic ship racing, Wipeout. Also, there was Driver. Basically, a police chase simulator with the vibe of old movies. And I almost forgot about the combat races like Road Rush, Twisted Metal or Carmageddon. By the next console generation, the era of PlayStation 2, Xbox and GameCube, game budgets had exploded. Games became much more expensive to make, but at the same time they could make way more money thanks to the massive audience of consoles, especially PS2. Best-selling console in history, by the way. Developers just needed a hook, a trend that could pull a huge number of new players. And if you are around of my age or older, you already know what that trend was. Street racing. Street racing movies were everywhere, and the Fast and Furious basically became the face of that era. The impact of this trend was huge. I even had a classmate who grew up obsessed with this culture and later started doing drift and racing professionally himself. After street racing blew up, these games started showing up everywhere, like NFS Underground, followed by Underground 2 with its open world. Of course, other great racing games came out too. Some people would even say better ones, like Midnight Club or Just. But they had one common problem. To most people, they just looked like Underground, but worse. The swan song of that era was probably NFS Most Wanted. At its core, it used the same structure as Underground 2, but with two new major details: police chases and the blacklist system. The whole game was built around climbing that blacklist. You earned reputation by winning races, completing activities and attracting police attention. Once your reputation was high enough, you could challenge racers from the list, take their cars after beating them and slowly work your way up to the top. But after that, the street racing mania slowly started losing hype. You could already feel that in NFS Carbon and even more in Undercover. Eventually, it all led to NFS Shift, a sub-series that dropped street racing and was dangerously close to becoming a full simulator. At around the same time, Test Drive Unlimited came out, a game that you could easily call Forza Horizon before Forza Horizon. Think about it, you land on an island, create your own custom character, and you are left alone with a giant sandbox, full of side activities. In this case, that sandbox was Hawaii, and even today its scale is impressive. After that, you get a handful of mission types, where you raise your coolness rank, while also collecting new cars. all wrapped up in cozy Hawaiian atmosphere where everyone is friendly, optimistic and just there to have a good time. And I almost forgot that the game was a little bit an MMO, so other players shared the same map and you could even encounter and interact with them in open world. The only downside I would point out is that outside of missions there was honestly not much to do in open world. There were no real points of interest, no collectibles and not many side activities. But for its time the game was a hit and for a good reason. Still, in the 2000s, racing had one rival that did serious damage to the genre: GTA and other games like it. Sure, the graphics were worse and car physics were weaker, but publishers found it easier to sell a game where you could get out of the car and do other things. We got lots of games like that, and some racing games even tried to change their genre. Driver probably was the best example of that. But let's get back to the racing games. If you look at the situation, you will notice that by the end of 2000s, the genre basically split into three directions: arcade open world races, linear simulators, and linear arcade races. This is not even counting kart races. But just in case, some racing games tried to borrow elements from that space, like Blur, Split Second and the reboot of And Fast Hot Pursuit. But there's one thing missing from this list, one whole space that didn't really exist yet. Open world racing with simulator style physics. And that's exactly the gap the Forza Horizon series aimed to fill. Just a reminder to help this channel with your like or subscribe if you liked the video. Trust me, it means a lot for me. Playground Games took the core of Forza Motorsport, pulled over its physics model and huge car roadster, and placed it onto the skeleton of Test Drive Unlimited. Then they mixed a bit of And Fast Most Wanted, fixed some issues these games had, and topped it all with relaxed summer festival vibe. In fact, if you played the first game, you can clearly see how hard the developers tried to capture the atmosphere of a place full of freedom, music and fun. As far as I remember, they even brought a real-life DJ and festival organizer to help curate the soundtrack, which is probably why it still sounds so good today. And after all of that, the result was a fairly modest success. It wasn't as big as something like GTA 3 or original Modern Warfare. The game sold around 2 million copies, pretty good for an exclusive game, but it wasn't a system seller. The most interesting part started later. After the success of the first game, Forza Horizon 2 released on the next-gen Xbox One. And no, we are not gonna talk about Xbox 360 version, it doesn't exist. Players were allowed to properly go off-road, and some of rough edges of the first game were cut away, shaping what would become the final identity of the series for a mass audience. Like this game is the Forza Horizon we know today. Horizon 3 and 4 expanded things further, but these were mostly additions for the second game, rather than true game changers. But by that point, Microsoft looked around and realized one simple truth. They no longer had any real competition in this space. Look at what happened to other open world races. Test Drive Unlimited basically ended after its sequel that launched with several technical issues, and Atari ended up disbanding the development team. Burnout was frozen and EA moved devs over to Need for Speed. But even NFS kept shifting identity, and by the mid-2010s barely had a clear direction anymore. Driver was effectively shut down by Ubisoft, which replaced it with a new racing franchise, The Crew. But by the time of its sequel, Ubisoft avoided direct competition with Forza Horizon, and instead tried to carve out a niche by adding planes and motorcycles. And yes, car physics were not that great. On top of that, Ubi never really treated the series as a main priority, focusing most of their resources on Assassin's Creed. Like the last Crew game that didn't even have a proper marketing at all. Overall, as you can see, Forza Horizon didn't really invent anything. It was simply a high quality series that focused heavily on accessibility. We had the light positive festival vibe, driving assists and the time rewind. So the game literally worked for everyone. On top of that, there was a huge amount of content, and the game rewarded players with the new cars for just about everything. All of this created a perfect session-based game that people played for years. Also, the release of Horizon 5 happened during lockdown, which helped make it the most successful entry in the series. Horizon became so big that the main series, aka Forza Motorsport, was just thrown away for its more popular child. Yes, you could say that Forza Horizon has been stagnating, and you will be right. But from the start, it had strong and most importantly, working formula that didn't need to be broken. That's why each new installment felt slightly better than the last one, while steadily growing its audience. By the time when Forza Horizon 5 came out, the series had become so massive that the competitors simply didn't stand a chance. At that point, Horizon had more than 10 years of work behind it, and that's not something you can catch up with a single game. New Horizon 6 is still the same game, but it does refine a few things, like the new progression system. And on top of that, the developers used the ultimate cheat code, Japan. Because, as we all know from that famous meme, everything is better in Japan. But in the end, as much as I like Horizon, I hope something new comes along and shakes up open world racing again. Well, thank you for watching and goodbye. See ya in the next video, guys.